Well, good evening or good afternoon, wherever you might be. I'm Bruce Hawley, president of the Circus Historical Society, and welcome to our Circus History Live program in celebration of Women's History Month with our very special guest, Queen of the Air, Dolly Jacobs. And now here's your host, Chris Berry, vice president of the Circus Historical Society. Chris?
Thanks, Bruce. And we have a very exciting conversation here with Dolly Jacobs, who most of you on this call probably already know. I'm just going to do a brief introduction. Probably the greatest aerialist of her generation, but then she became a circus owner, businesswoman, a mentor to children who were learning the craft of the circus through the Sarasota Sailor Circus. And also, I think it's important to point out that in addition to the many awards that she's received, including the Circus Ring of Fame in Sarasota, in 2015, she was awarded a fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts for her work as a circus aerialist, probably the first circus performer, maybe the only one ever so honored. But one of the things that makes this particular episode of Circus History Live so important is because we are honoring women. We are celebrating women's contributions to circus history. And Dolly and her husband, Pedro Rios, they co-founded the Circus Arts Conservatory in Sarasota just to kind of continue the traditions that she learned from her family members and her mentors too. Of course, her father, the legendary Lou Jacobs, internationally famed clown who was with the Ringling Circus for about 60 years, actually more than that. And Dolly today continues to pass down that rich tradition that she had learned through the Sailor Circus children that she works with. It's one of the oldest circus schools in the United States. So Dolly, thank you for joining us today. This is terrific to have you with this group of your circus fans, but circus fans in general.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Well, we have memories of you as a performer. A lot of us have memories of you at Circus Sarasota today. But what are some of your first memories of the circus? I mean, you were literally born into it.
Wow. Now, how much time do you have? So my first memories, I can remember my father putting his makeup on my sister and I had my red polka dot pajamas on, and there was an event at the Ringling Museum grounds. So it was, I believe there were Sailor Circus students and there were professional circus artists that were, either it was an opening of one of the museums or buildings there, but there was a performance. And I don't know if many of you remember, but one of the gags my father had was a dachshund, which was somebody in the front and somebody in the back and under the costume. So he didn't have two midgets, so he used my sister and I. And guess who got to be the tail end? Well, halfway around the track, I tripped and fell and went crying and running in the other direction. Oh. So that was my first introduction into circus, and I never was a clown from that day on.
But what an aerialist you became in the years that followed. So your inspiration and your mentors, how did you get kind of into that whole idea of being an aerialist?
Growing up around Ringling Brothers, I was in awe as a little girl. I grew up here in Sarasota, went to school, was in competitive swimming, ballet, gymnastics, Sailor Circus. But whenever the circus was close by, we would go. And I was just in awe of the aerialists. And I just knew in my heart of hearts, one day I would be up there, not really to follow in anybody else's footsteps, but to create my own. And I think I kind of got that from my father, creating your own path. So yeah, from a young age, I was just in awe of the aerialist. And I was fortunate enough that my godmother, Margie Geiger, took me under her wing and taught me the Roman ring act that I can never thank her enough. And it took me around the world. And that type of gift of sharing knowledge is priceless. And I hope that I can also do that. Because I don't want to just keep it, I want to pass it on so for future generations.
So I'd like to talk a little about Margie Geiger. I know I guess she's your godmother too, right?
That's right.
And so she obviously very close with your family to start with, but how did she inspire you? How did or did you go to her and say, "Hey, I want to do what you do"?
Well, bless her heart. And I don't know if she's watching, but she's 95 years young and still kicking and can still bend over. I love her to death. So it turns out my sister, she taught my sister first. My sister graduated school first. We had to finish school. And she taught my sister single trapeze, which was just an incredible act that was just breathtaking to watch her. And I was a couple years behind, and I knew when I finished my schooling, I didn't know what to do. I thought maybe I'd do low wire, but that was so difficult. I practiced it for a while, and I just didn't want, there were so many trapeze acts out there, and I didn't want to compete or be compared. So I couldn't figure out what to do, and I said, okay, I'll just start with trapeze, and then I'll go from there. I'll just get my feet wet. But Margie brought her rings out to practice. And the only other person that I had seen doing rings was Vicky Eunice. And she was incredible, very muscular, very strong. And I thought, I cannot start with something like that. And I don't want to follow in her footsteps. She created her own path and an incredible act. So, but Margie said, but this is different. They swing. And I never witnessed it, so I gave it a try, and it was love at first sight.
How old were you when you started working on the rings?
19.
19 years old. But you had been around the Ringling Circus quite a bit when you weren't in school and things like that. Didn't you do some performing on the web too, even earlier than that?
I was a showgirl for 5 years. Yes, my sister started before me. And I finished my schooling with homeschooling on the road and had tutors. And then when I finished schooling, stayed home. But you were talking about inspirations, and I have to tell you, one of my greatest inspirations, one of her biggest admirers was Rogana, and I'm sure a lot of the people out there know that name. And I used to be a little girl on the sidelines watching her perform. And it wasn't so much what she did, it was how she did it. And that's what really got me. And I'm so lucky to say, to this day, we're friends.
And for those who might not have seen either Dolly or Rogana perform, I think that you both share that tremendous showmanship, or on Women's History Month, showwomanship ability to really command the attention of the audience when you're up there. And it's really one of the reasons why you are remembered as you are, and Rogana is too, as a performer. But when you think back on, you talked a little bit about your sister, obviously as someone who you were on the road with for a while, and of course, you know, your father, your mother, a performer herself. So how important was it to have that support of the family?
Oh, it was so important. You know, Papa was gone most of the year, and we missed him so. And when we were able to start traveling on Ringling, like I said, as my sister went first, and then I followed a couple years later, it was wonderful. It was so educational. Besides the whole environment of being around people from all over the world, that incredible cultural experience that you have and are educated by. There's a universal language that even if you don't speak their language, there's a circus language that you can communicate. But having my father and mother and my sister together it's priceless. I feel very blessed with my life. I feel that I've had the best of both worlds, home life and traveling, and very fortunate to have been able to work on Ringling for 14 years, 5 years as a showgirl, 9 years with my Roman Ring act. It was a platform, and I thanked Kenny Felt the other day when he came to our show, and thanked him for giving us this platform on which to grow.
Well, you know, when you look back on those years, obviously you mentioned, Ringling, you mentioned Big Apple. There must have been a tremendous difference in performing in an arena with 20,000 people and being, 200 feet from the back row of the circus tent too. How did your act change, and how did you kind of adapt to that?
It was a huge change. When after, like I said, all those years on Ringling, and went directly to Big Apple Circus, which most of you know is a one ring European style circus, and you can literally see the people in the seats. Whereas on Ringling, it was just all, because I worked in a blackout, you didn't see them, but you knew they were there. So you're working for them, but you're also working for yourself. When I arrived and started performing on Big Apple, and again, on Ringling, you had to exaggerate everything, your eyelashes, your hair, your makeup, and everything, because you had to reach those people at the very top row in Madison Square Garden. And so now all of a sudden you have to tone everything down. And I remember when I first started at Big Apple, they said, okay, tone it down. You can tone down the makeup, and you can tone down, and all of a sudden you could see the people's faces. You could see them enjoying what you're doing. And it was just wonderful. It was so intimate. You can have a relationship with them. It's wonderful.
You talked earlier also about sort of that international language of the circus, and there have been people they've seen you perform all over the world, circus festivals in Europe, in Japan, various places. But I happen to know that you went to Monte Carlo a couple of times too. Tell us a little bit about those experiences.
I went to Monte Carlo. Ringling brought over a few acts back in 1977, so I was still green with my act. I started my act in 1976, so I only had like 1 year under my belt. And what was wonderful, priceless for me experience was my father went and was able to walk me into the ring and walk me out of the ring. And that memory I'll cherish forever. I have a picture here, and I'm going to see if I can show it to you. Let me know if there's any glare. But after one of the, after the performance, when they were giving the awards, Henry Ringling North was one of the judges. And let me take this out of the frame, because this picture speaks volumes to me. It's my father shaking hands. Can you see it?
A little closer to the camera if you can, Dolly. Yep. Yes.
Can you see that? How wonderful that is?
Yes.
The size of my father's hands, and what for me in this picture is the years my father was there, from John Ringling to the North to the Felds. So these two people in this picture go back so far. And for me, when that picture, it was at Loomis Dean actually took this picture. When this picture was taken, for me, time stood still.
That's a wonderful memory.
Time stood still.
And then you went back a second time when you were at Big Apple, right?
I did, 1988, and Jeanette Williams brought me over there. Bless her heart, she did everything that she was meant to do and more. I had my somersault, so I was able to earn win the Silver Clown and the Les Dames du Cirque.
It really two of the greatest awards that are given out in the circus world, both the Dames du Cirque and the Silver Clown, of course. And I happen to know you had a little bit of trouble getting that, or at least concern about getting those awards back to the United States.
Yes, I had to change in Dusseldorf, and the plane was full of circus producers and impresarios, and I had all my the Les Dames du Cirque award is a huge horse, and also on a heavy marble base, along with the Silver Clown. So they were very heavy, needless to say, and I had them both in my backpack that I was carrying, and I had to I had to lay over in Dusseldorf and catch my plane the next day. And so I figured there's got to be a hotel attached to the airport, which there wasn't. It was evening, and I was walking, looking for a hotel, and somebody said, "Oh, there's a hostel over there." And I'm like, "Oh no, I'm all alone in Dusseldorf on the road." And along comes Jeanette and her friend, and they picked me up, took me to a hotel, and I was saved.
You talked about that somersault, which if you could describe that for us, exactly how you would do that. We don't have any video to show tonight, but it really was a unique trick. And I know that, in fact, I don't know if he's on the line right now, but I know that when you went up to the Big E, you had an opportunity to perform that specifically for Wayne McCary.
Again, I was doing, when I started the Ring Act, I went into a display on Ringling. So I was in with 3 other acts performing at the same time. And my drive and hunger was to be a solo artist. And so I was asking around, and I heard about, actually from Margie's husband, Joe Geiger, about this full flyaway somersault. There was 4 people that had done it 40 years prior. And Winnie Colino, Ethel Janier, Frank Shepard, and I can't remember the other one. And I said, well, that's what I'm going to do. And it was the only trick that I practiced with a safety belt on, because you couldn't do it down low. And there was a lot of people that discouraged me and said, you're going to kill yourself, don't do it. But there was a few that encouraged, Wally Naughton, one of them, who just said, you can do it. And that's one of the things in life, is you can encourage somebody, and it can be, you don't know you're doing it, but you can move mountains by encouraging people, giving them that little spark of encouragement, of fire to light that flame, to give them that belief in themselves that they can do it. And that's what Wally did for me. And I practiced it, did this kind of, I have arthritis in my neck because I had to learn the hard way. It was trial and error. There was nobody that really could teach me how to do it. So I got a lot of whiplashes, needless to say, but I was able to go a long time. I'm very fortunate that I was able to perform as long as I did.
You have had a tremendous longevity when it comes to being a performer. I was actually wondering about, the punishment that you did put your body through, because it's difficult to do those things that you did. And aches and pains, I'm sure, show up for all of us, but especially when you punished your neck in particular the way you did.
Yeah, believe it or not, because the rings are all upper body mostly. But believe it or not, I had both my hips replaced 3 years ago. I would think that I would have shoulder. I do have neck problems, but nothing near as severe as I suffered for years with my hips for arthritis, and had to have them replaced.
Well, you still make a fabulous appearance in the circus ring, and some of us had the opportunity of seeing you just a few weeks ago at Circus Sarasota. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the Center for Circus Arts Conservatory. How did that come about?
Well, Peter and I, first of all, we worked, he was a feature aerialist, and as was I, so we didn't have a chance to work together. So we combined and made On Wings of Love, the aerial strap act, and we worked that for about a year. But Peter always wanted to have a circus school or be part of a circus school. We had the opportunity here to start Circus Sarasota. We actually called it the National Circus School of Performing Arts, which was quite a mouthful. And they already have École Nationale du Cirque in Canada. So we changed the name to Circus Sarasota. We started off, and we have so many wonderful friends and performers, artists that believed in us. And we couldn't really start with a school because it's like putting the cart before the horse. There's no income from school. There's a lot of knowledge that you can give out, but we know the circus. We know we've performed in incredible places all around the world, so we knew how to do that part of it. So we started with that, And from there, we were able to, quite a few years later, to take over the Sailor Circus, to take it under our wing, if you will, and manage it. It's been, it's been an incredible journey. Next year, we're actually going on 25 years since we incorporated as a 501c3.
So, both you and Pedro, obviously, as you just pointed out, I mean, you're performers, but you kind of moved from this whole area of being in the circus ring to controlling the activity, managing this. There must have been some challenges with that too, just because you didn't have that training.
It's true, but you don't get anywhere in life by yourself. And I'm the first one to recognize and give credit to all those people along the way that gave their advice, whether it be financially or with their knowledge. But there were so many people from the get-go that believed in us, believed in our dream. And yes, there were challenges along the way, many, but you learn from them, you grow from them. Every place you work, as hard and difficult as it is, you become a better person because of it.
So just kind of halfway through here, a couple of thoughts. We would like to, if you have questions for Dolly this afternoon, this evening, feel free to go to the little thing down at the bottom there where it says chat. Feel free to put in any questions you might have. I'll relay those over to her. You are watching Circus History Live. This is a monthly presentation that the Circus Historical Society does. If you're not a member already, I would encourage you to go to our website, circushistory.org. It's an opportunity for you to learn more about circus history. And of course, you wouldn't be here today if you weren't interested in it. And we put out our quarterly magazine, Bandwagon, which actually, for those of you who are members, you should be seeing that in your mailbox within the next few days. But Dolly, when we go back to kind of talk a little bit about some of the things that you've done, Circus Sarasota, the Circus Arts Conservatory. I remember seeing Circus Sarasota set up on the Washington Mall a few years ago in conjunction with a large circus festival that was going on in Washington, the Smithsonian put on. Is that where you sort of got recognized from the National Endowment for the Arts?
Actually, Chris, it was in 2015, yes. I got the award for the National Endowment for the Arts National Heritage Fellowship. Was 2015, and a few years prior to that, it was here in Florida, so when we were on the mall, that was a circus, but we helped put that all together, and our tent was there. Circus schools from around the nation were there. It was awesome. It was really incredible. That's actually the last time I performed. Had my hips done after that.
For those of you, it was, I remember watching you perform there, and it was truly spectacular. For those of you, again, the Circus Historical Society has been very much involved with a lot of activities. We had our convention in conjunction with that circus festival put on by the Smithsonian, and we brought the Two Hemispheres Bandwagon to Washington, and which is owned by Peter Gorman, and it participated in the big parade that happened on July the 4th that year. It was terrific to see you recognized by the National Endowment in 2015. Tell us a little bit about what that means to you. I mean, you're the first and only circus performer to ever be really recognized in that way.
Well, let me first just say thank you to you, Chris, for all that you do for keeping the history alive, and that means so much. It means a lot to me because the younger kids, they need to know, about the history of the circus, and it's important. And I just wanted to thank you for that.
It takes a village, right?
It does, and honestly, you wanted me to brag on myself, and it's very difficult for me. I feel very honored and humbled to have received this award. And when I received it in Washington at the Library of Congress, I said to the people that we had so many of our staff and friends and family that came up. It was one of the highlights of my life. But I said on the microphone that I was accepting this award on behalf of all the circus artists that paved the way for the rest of us. They deserve this honor. So I accepted it on their behalf.
That's terrific. I'd like to talk about some of those people, and I see that Belinda DeBelli has a question for you here, and it talks about one of those probably inspirational people, which was Antoinette Kinsella. You
Oh, yeah.
talked about being a showgirl early on. Obviously, the family had known the Kinsellas for decades, but how was that? Working with this woman who, in her own right, was a legend.
What an amazing woman to be able, and again, I was there 14 years. So during those years as a showgirl, well, first my sister went, and then because we were both already athletically inclined and part of Sailor Circus, when I became of age that I could possibly get in as a showgirl, well, first with my sister, and then Antoinette asked my dad, "You got any more of them at home?" So I was able to join at a very young age of 14. But what an amazing woman. I remember standing on the sidelines that she would go up when the Gaunas or whatever flying act was there, and she would swing between shows. I don't know how old she was. She was probably younger than I am now. I don't know. But I was in awe of her, and I was so fortunate to have her friendship, and then later on in years to be able to share a dressing room with her. Wonderful, wonderful memories.
In our last issue of Circus History Live, which marked Black History Month last month in February, we had several pioneers, really trailblazers, African-American performers, and Cedric Walker from the Universal Circus. They had talked a little bit about some of the opposition, discrimination, things like that they had experienced. As a female performer, the daughter of one of the stars of the show, did you ever feel any of that? Denise, that's from Denise Payne.
No. Hi, Denise. Wonderful memories with her too. No, I didn't. I think in the circus, it was, at least as far as I could tell, there was no different color. There was no different language. Women and men worked on par with each other, side by side, shoulder to shoulder. Women did a lot. Women, took on a lot and didn't expect any recognition for it. We just did it. As I don't think what's outside in the world, I don't see it in the circus. At least I didn't, and I hope it's not there.
So Wayne McCary has joined us. I know that you worked for him for a while when he produced shows up in New England. And Wayne wants to know, what was it that surprised you the most as you turned from being a performer into being a producer? Now you're actually getting the acts that are in the show that you're putting on.
Well, the change, I guess, what the fortunate part is that I continued performing and taking a leadership role. So I guess it was putting more on my plate. So I think that was the difference. But I was fortunate enough because I enjoyed performing so much. I enjoyed the strap act that I was doing towards the end. You can't replace that. So I was fortunate to be able to do both. And now I can do more in the leadership role that I'm not performing.
Interesting. Greg Parkinson has a question for you here too. Greg, you talked a little bit earlier that you spoke with Kenneth Feld a few weeks ago. Any specific memories of working for either Irvin Feld or Kenneth Feld?
I don't have any specific memory other than working hard, and they were always there, to make sure the show was tip top. I kind of remember that when I first started the rings, I had feathers in my hair, and Kenny told me, take the feathers out, which was great. It was a great tip because it probably was too much. Like I said, you learn as you go. And like I said too, they gave not only myself, but many, many people an incredible platform to grow on.
Another producer who you talk about the costumes, another producer who you worked with, of course, was Paul Binder at the Big Apple Circus. And Paul told me a story, maybe you can relate about a costume that you had, a very elaborate headdress and costume that you
Okay,
had.
you ready for a laugh? So I had this one costume that was oriental, red velvet, long sleeves, and it had a beautiful headdress with feathers at the top and wire. And backstage at the Big Apple, it was dark, and there was a hanger where you would hang your costumes and all get ready and go in. And this particular year, I was the opening act. Well, they had all the cast members out there, like a Mardi Gras, and they all circled the whole circumference of the ring, and a spotlight went to the curtain, and everybody styled to me, and I walked out elegant, and I just started hearing the performers giggling, and I didn't know why, and there's nothing I could do, but they were giggling, and I found out later there was a hanger in my headpiece.
That's
I'll never
hilarious.
live it down.
Well, Paul Gutheil's on the line here too. He said that he remembers you coming in on the Hannaford show in maybe a custom car, an Excalibur, in White Plains, New York. Do you remember that?
That was Gaylord Maynard's car, and I had my Hello Dolly. It was a white with a big hat, and they had me working in the middle of the web routine, so I came in this convertible white car sitting on the back. There was a couple of times when I did some shrine dates where I was sitting on the back of a car, and the driver, which was one of the Shriners, sometimes kind of was heavy on the gas, and I almost went flying off backwards.
So was your act pretty much the same for a Shrine Circus as it was on Ringling?
Absolutely.
Yeah, same music, same everything.
Well, I changed music and costume every so many, a year or two, to keep it fresh, and added new tricks and took out some old ones. And so it's always a constant growing of, recreating.
So Steve Gossard actually has kind of a question along those same lines about how you chose your routine and the music that you played too. I mean, which tricks you would do when and so forth.
That's a great question, because when I started doing the straps, more so than the rings, it's more of a waltz once you start swinging. The stir routine would be a music that I would just, music is very moving, whether it be for the audience, but also for the artist. And so you have to that's what I teach the girls. You have to find a piece of music that makes you want to dance, that moves you. And so, again, with the ring act, it kind of limited, but I had a beautiful Blue Danube waltz for the swinging routine. Pedro edited it perfectly to each trick. He's wonderful like that. And when I started doing the straps, that to me, because you can use so many different pieces of music, and I to this day I want to make a list. I'm sure Pedro has a list of all the different pieces of music that I work to, because they are just incredible. I'll tell you one story. When we were doing the summer show at the museum, the Historic Oslo, and I was working to My Way, and it was by, I believe, Andre Bocelli, and it was beautiful. And in the middle of the act, the lights and the sound go off, and I'm still up in the air. It was a storm or something outside, and and Pedro, luckily the electric was on for the winch, thank God, but I couldn't see anything, but he landed me, and all you could hear was me hitting the floor, and I yelled out to the audience, I did it my way.
Oh, that's funny. So you talked about that final performance in Washington, D.C. Charles Hanson had the question, when was the final performance with the Roman rings?
So the Roman rings, I believe the last time I performed was 1999, 2000. I was doing actually both act, straps and rings. And I had a herniated disc, and I'm diabetic, and my sugar went out of control. So it was like that was the it was tough to do both. And with my disc, you know, the rings, the straps are difficult, but the rings were very difficult. And you have to be there 100%. So that was the last time I did the rings, 99, 2000.
And that was on Big Apple.
Nope, that was on our show.
Oh, on
Yes,
shows.
yes.
So you've got a lot of friends on this call today, Dolly and Bruno.
I wish I could see you all.
I know. Bruno Loyal, who actually is in Samoa, I guess, right, Bruno?
Yes, I am. Yes.
He wanted to see if you had any recollection of performing for his show in Dallas back in the mid 80s.
Absolutely, absolutely, Bruno.
Hello, Dolly. Hello.
I do remember, and I did web for you too, and I did the rings.
Yes, yes.
It was a really fun date. Nice to see you.
You must come
again.
to Samoa sometime, please.
And Mary Pat Cooney is on, and she says that 40 years ago today, she performed with you in Knoxville, Tennessee. And she said that she was just in total awe watching you when she was a showgirl on the Ringling Show.
Oh, how awesome is that?
Okay.
Thank you so much.
And Vanessa Smith, who also, of course, you know from those days, she has a question about what happened to all of your costumes, all of those beautiful custom-made costumes.
I have them all. I have them all. There's quite a few of the capes that are on display at the Ringling Museum. But I have all the other costumes that I made. A lot of the unitards that I wore for the Strap Act, I had made by Bill Fenner here in Sarasota, and he did a wonderful job. I could have never done anything close to his artwork.
So the costume, just to kind of stay on that theme a little bit about costumes, in those earlier Ringling days when like Don Foote was still designing the costumes, your costumes, as Vanessa said, very spectacular. But Don Foote was doing dozens of costumes that were, you know, as equally as spectacular. Kind of walk us through that process, how you knew what you were going to wear. Did you talk? Had you watched the act? How did they decide what the costume would look like?
They didn't tell me what to wear for my act. You know, they basically, that was for the showgirls and the clowns and such, all the production numbers. Once I became an act, I was on my own. And there was I can't remember who I got the information from, but again, like I said, it takes a village. You know, all these people that helped me along the way. Chris Berry in Los Angeles made costumes for Las Vegas, and he had used costumes, and somehow I was able to buy some used capes, and those were the first ones that I wore, and headpieces. And then after that, Hetty Joe Starr, I found out through Jeanette, and there was some other people on Ringling that had costumes made by her, and she made quite a few of the other costumes, entrance capes, I should say, for the Ring Act. I made all my bikinis myself.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Catherine Bassetti is on the line here. Catherine, if you can open up your mic, I'm just going to have you go ahead and mention this to Dolly rather than read it myself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, hi, Dolly.
Hi, Kathy.
How are you? I love you.
Aww.
Okay, so I don't know. Okay, so you can see my screen.
We can see that you're holding a newspaper. Yes.
Yeah. So this is Dolly.
It says "Circus life is glamorous." That's the headline.
This is from the Seattle Times newspaper. I'm here in Seattle, where I was born. I'm back here now, and it says I've got a lot of pictures of Dolly, but I didn't know if we were going to show anything here. But so that's why I put it on the chat. But anyway, this is pretty cute because this is very. Dolly was a showgirl, and she says she was 15.
You were
15, my love, and it says, "Say showgirls, circus life is glamorous." I don't have my glasses on. So anyway, it says. So it was Vicky Marcazzo, brilliant, you know, flashy Vicky Marcazzo with her platinum hair and all that, and myself and Dolly. And we went to some studio. I don't even remember how we got there or whatever, but it was Seattle newspaper. And it says, don't let anybody kid you that the circus life isn't glamorous. That's the consensus of 3 of us showgirls appearing. Oh no, this is not Seattle. This is Columbia. Well, Columbia something. Maybe Ohio. Anyway, it says da 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 da. But there down here it says, quote by Dolly. I think the traveling and the excitement are what make you want to be with the circus, says 15-year-old Dolly Jacobs, who is the daughter of clown great Lou Jacobs. And then I say, brilliant statement. By the time Dolly is 20, she will have been around the country many times, chimed in Kathy Bassetti, a native of Seattle. And then on and on. And so I had written in the chat that later I went to live in Spain for 1,000 years. Remember that? And came back one day because I turned into this photojournalist, so new young photojournalist. And I thought, oh, making a piece about a beautiful Dolly. And I'd never seen your show. I just turned up at the Madison Square Garden from Spain to New York. And oh my God, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. So that's the first time I saw it. And you were already a star from Ringling, you were already on your way. This must have been 78.
You have to come to Florida.
So,
yeah.
So Dolly, as I say, you have so many of your friends are on this call right now. Brian Velasquez had a question, and I'm going to actually take it a little bit further, Brian. His question was, what was your favorite circus act of all time? I'm sure that would be very difficult for you to just name one. So I'm going to take it the next step. You are now a circus producer. You can, if you had a magic wand and could put any circus act in your show, I'll name the category and you name the person. And we're not, and I know that we may not, if you could put a clown in the show, who would it be?
Of course, my dad.
Of course.
Of course, my dad.
Yeah, the truly one of the all-time great clowns since people have been clowning in the modern era, for sure. If you were to take a thrill act of some sort, and it could be a cannon act, it could be, a crazy, single trapeze act. Is there anybody out there that when you would see them perform, you would say, wow, how does that person do that?
There's so many.
Yeah.
There's so many out there. If you were to ask me who I would bring to the back from the past, that might be easier for me to answer.
Okay, there you go.
Just like for my dad, but for a thrill act, I remember as a little girl watching the zucchinis and the cannon. I think that would be awesome to be able to see that. I mean, even though there's, Smith out there doing an incredible job too.
Yes. And you've had so many great acts on your own show too. So that was not a fair question. So I'll withdraw it.
There's so many great acts out there. I feel, I don't consider myself a producer. I feel like I'm more of being able to give a platform just like a platform was given to myself.
How do you think, when you look back, even in the days when you were that 15-year-old showgirl to today, the circus has changed a lot. And have the audiences changed too?
I don't think so. I don't think the audience has changed, but boy, the circus has changed. And I feel so fortunate to have been part of that era that I was part of. With Ringling Brothers and Gunther Gable-Williams, and the incredible acts that I was able to witness and work with. And then I think back of my father, and a lot of these greats that are, some of them gone, some of them are still with us, the life they must have lived and how they feel about that era that they were part of, where they had the buckets and that was under the big top, and but still the camaraderie that was then, I believe, is still now within the artists, because we call ourselves family, and we are. There's a common bond. And as far as the audience goes, I think how's the saying go? As long as there's, I forget the saying, but there's children of all ages. And as long as there's children, there will always be a circus.
Yeah, yeah. I do know that a lot of, we sort of touched on it a couple minutes ago, a lot of people have wonderful memories of you performing with your father on the Red Unit of Ringling back in the 70s and early 1980s. How was that, performing with your dad?
It was awesome. I got asked, growing up and going to school, what's it like to have a father as a clown? Well, you get very popular at show and tell when you get to bring in, parts of his props. But being able to perform with him, and I remember before I started traveling, sitting by our kitchen window, looking out, just waiting for the taxi to be coming to bring him home. I missed him so. We were very close, our family, we still are. But I missed him so, and so being able to work with him was wonderful.
And,
I can't find words.
And the whole Sarasota circus community that exists, now you get to stay there and see all those people as often as you want to, right?
I'm telling you, we open our show every year with a dress rehearsal, and we invite all the circus performers, invite them to that performance. And we always do a special speech to our family. It's really our circus family. And for me, standing in the ring, looking out and just panning from side to side and seeing these incredible artists that I admired and grew up watching. And part of my speech annually is asking those who performed 1950 and prior, please stand up and receive your applause. And it literally brings tears to my eyes, because they stand up with such pride, and the house lights go on so I can see them. And I wish I could just capture that and save it forever, because each year there's more that aren't there.
Yes. Well, it's a real tribute what you have done with the Circus Arts Conservatory. We just have a few minutes left. Steve Gossard, who always has great questions as it relates to aerialists and so forth. He was talking about the fact that somersault that you did. I mean, that was an extremely dangerous trick that you would do. And in fact, people were killed doing it. And once you did it, did you ever have that fear? I mean, knowing how dangerous it was? And then secondly, how did you keep the act fresh every time that you did it? Maybe 3 shows a day.
You're right. That's a very good question. I wouldn't say fear. I didn't have fear, but it was respect, because I knew what could happen. You have to have that respect. Working at Busch Gardens, we did 3 and 4 shows a day, every day, 1 day off a week. And you would get into this mode where, kind of like when you ride your bike to school or whatever, the same way, or you drive, where you're going and you kind of go on autopilot. Well, that can happen, believe it or not, even in your act, because you do the same routine, it's the same venue, nothing's changing, everything's the same. And that's where you really, really have to keep your wits about you. Your reflexes have to be there, because you'll be up there. And I would remember swinging and thinking about what I needed from the market or what I was going to make for dinner, and that's not good. And to that point, there was one, usually I get asked, have I ever fallen? Well, it was there at Busch Gardens that I believe I was on autopilot one morning show, and I went for the somersault. My hand slipped off. I went backwards. I caught the rope upside down under my arm, which took all the skin off as I slid down, but I landed in Pedro's arms with my toes pointed. Thank you very much. the audience thought it was part of the show. And that's when I decided to marry him.
Yeah, you fell for him, literally, right?
Yes.
So, when you kind of look to the future, you obviously have devoted your entire life to the circus in some way, shape, or form. What the circus lives, I like to say the circus lives in a lot of places. Whether it's Cirque du Soleil, whether it's some of the circus youth programs, not only Sailor Circus, but some of the others. What do you think the future is for the circus at a time when people's time is really the biggest competitor that we have? It's not necessarily television, but it's just what people do with their time now.
I don't think the circus will ever, it might evolve and change, as far as, look how it's evolved with the improvement of lighting and sound and all the effects that we have today. But as far as, if you take all that away, you still have the core act, which the person that trained, just like a ballet dancer or ice skater, they all train to do this particular feat. And so that is the core of it. And as far as circus in the future, I believe it'll always be there. It'll be enhanced. I think circus used to be 3 hours long. Now it's 2. And so people don't want to sit that long, but they want to be thrilled. And I think the future is bright.
Well, performers though, you put a lot of hours into learning your act and rehearsing and getting that routine perfect. Do you think that, where do you find the next generation of performers, I guess?
There's many circus schools out there. I remember hearing Pedro say when he first came over, which was in '84, there was only a handful, and now there's hundreds of circus schools. So it's very popular. And with Cirque du Soleil and its impression on circus itself, I think there's a lot of opportunities for young students to be able to fulfill a career like my own.
Well, it's been a wonderful career, and this has been a wonderful discussion. Dolly Jacobs, thank you again for joining us as the Circus Historical Society celebrates Women's History Month with our conversation with the Queen of the Air. We look forward to having all of you join us again for our next edition of Circus History Live. Until then, we will see you down the road.
Bye, Dolly.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. And the recording will be available tomorrow. If you logged in later, please log on to the YouTube channel for Circus Historical Society. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Dolly, so much.
Thank you.
Chris.
Bye, Dolly.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Wish I could give you all a hug.